You are listening to Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Hey there, guys. Colton here with my podcast, Here Before, Here Now. And I am really excited to tell you about my guest today. His name is Aaron Yazzie. He is a mechanical engineer at NASA, and this guy has blown up. I mean, I've seen so many different articles about him. PBS just did like a profile on him. He appeared as himself in a television show as a cartoon. But this guy has done a lot, especially for advancement of Native people in STEM fields. So I am really happy to bring Aaron on this morning. Aaron, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, Bennett, good morning. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely. So would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure thing. Aaron Yazzie in a Nishle, Torachitni, Pashas Chin, Kiane Deshache, Tokane Deshanella. Hi everybody. I'm Aaron Yazzie. I'm Diné. I'm Navajo. I'm of the Salt clan, born for the Bitterwater clan. I was born in Tuba City, Arizona. I'm a Navajo Nation, but grew up in Holbrook, Arizona, border town in northern Arizona. And now I currently live in the Los Angeles area in Pasadena, California, working for NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
So tell me how that is. I mean, that's pretty amazing to be working for NASA. You're a graduate of Stanford, which I also saw that you were just inducted into a Hall of Fame there. So tell me about your journey.
Yeah, my journey was interesting. I mean, I'm very fortunate in my life. And I always like to start by saying that I did start out with a very with a set of privilege, because my parents were just a really great set of parents, and they both were the first in their families to sort of go and get an education, and they met in college. My mom became a math teacher, and my dad became a civil engineer. And so they had big influences on my life. I had no doubt in my mind that when I was growing up that I was going to go to college. So I was already shooting for college. At the time, I didn't think it would lead to NASA or even Stanford. I thought I was going to go to one of the in-state schools and become an engineer and start working and live close to home. It wasn't until I went to a summer program for high school students called College Horizons, where they bring together a bunch of admissions counselors from a bunch of big name schools, places like Stanford and Harvard and Dartmouth and Cornell. And those people taught us Native students about the application process and about the scholarship application process. And it was they kind of just were treating us as if it's a no-brainer that we're going to apply to those schools. And wow. It was kind of the first time it opened up my mind to the possibility that maybe I have a chance at getting into a place like that. And so I started to dream a little bit bigger. I only applied to 3 schools, two Arizona schools, and then Stanford, and got into all 3 of them. And so then decided I want to go to Stanford. At the time, it was one of the top engineering schools in the nation.
That's pretty incredible. When you go back to that time, if you can go back to when you were a teenager applying for these schools and getting that acceptance letter or that acceptance packet from Stanford, what was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was insane. And it's actually a really funny story of the moment I found out, because I was at school, I was at my high school, and I was preparing for this National Honor Society banquet thing or induction ceremony that we were going to have. And somehow the acceptance package didn't go to my house. They handed it to me during that meeting. And it was just this big package that had Stanford written on it. And I was so nervous. One, I didn't want to tell very many people that I was trying to apply to Stanford, because I was like, if I get rejected, I don't want anybody to know. And then they hand it to me in front of all of my peers, all my friends at this meeting, and I had to open it in front of them. And thankfully, when I pulled out that envelope, it said congratulations. And so I just remember me and my friends running around school. My mom, like I said, was a math teacher at my high school, so I ran straight to her classroom and told her the news, and we celebrated together. It was a really cool experience.
Well, at least it was a packet, right? I think that's the tell. If it's a packet, that's good news that you probably got accepted versus a letter. But that's awesome. That is so cool. What was your experience like, going from Holbrook, a smaller community, to Stanford? I mean, I would imagine you were probably one of very few Native American kids there.
Right. It was a definite culture shock. I think we make up less than 1% of the population. Native Americans make up less than 1% of the population at Stanford. And it's just like, you get thrown into this place where everybody was the top person in their school, and they went to a school that maybe was a private school, or maybe a large school that has a lot of good resources, or one that have like advanced classes that allow them to pass out of certain requirements. And so me coming from a small public school that did a great job of preparing me, it just, I had to learn to learn at a higher level than I was used to. A really fast-paced school system, and it took a while for me to get used to it. For sure, I definitely struggled during periods of time, and there were times where I thought I was going to lose my financial aid, and that was really stressful. And but all in all, I mean, I was able to finish in 4 years, and I relied heavily on a bunch of peers. Actually, it's a lot of the minority students that were in engineering. We all kind of like pulled together and became a study group and really helped each other through the whole process.
What was the point in time in your life that you decided you wanted to become an engineer? I know you talked about that program in high school. Was it that young, or was it more in college when you decided this is really where I want to go?
I did decide in high school that I was interested in something related to engineering. I think I was influenced by my dad, but I also went to other summer programs. So I went to the Northern Arizona University Upward Bound program, and that was specifically to give us a project that deals with in the science and engineering field. And so we were sort of studying sustainable housing, and I got to do a project with that, and I realized I really liked it. I also did another summer program when I was in high school called NASA SHARP. It stands for NASA Summer High School Apprenticeship Research Program. It's a program run by NASA, and if you get accepted, then you get to choose a field of engineering to explore. I chose mechanical engineering, just kind of like reading descriptions and seeing it's like, this sounds interesting. And so I went and did that, and realized that I liked the project that they gave me. And I realized that I was actually kind of good at it.
Wow.
I think I eventually chose mechanical engineering because it really combines the technical engineering, science, math, physics, all that kind of stuff, with like a creative, artistic kind of brain thinking. So like it's almost like being an inventor, being creative, doing visual thinking, design thinking, and applying it to engineering. And I thought that was really cool.
Well, thank goodness for people like you, because my math skills are my phone now. That is so cool to hear you talk about that. And for me, I love space. Like I watch all these programs that are out there, like with Nova when it comes to things, or if there's like this new series that's coming out, gosh, I don't know, anywhere. It's amazing that you're doing work that helps explore the outside bounds of this world. Tell me about your involvement with the missions to Mars.
Yeah. So funny you mentioned Nova. I was actually on an episode of Nova because I was talking about Perseverance, which is the last role that I just had. And so I guess since I started, I've been sort of involved in a lot of Mars missions. And so I came when the Curiosity rover was being built, and I got to see it in the clean room. I later joined the Curiosity team to help test out all of its abilities to gather samples on Mars. So it has a drill and a scoop, so it can scoop loose material like sand and what we call regolith. And so that was fun. And then the next opportunity I got was a mission called InSight that also went to Mars, and it's a lander. So it landed in one spot, and it studied the deep interior of Mars. And that was the first project where I was given an assembly that was my responsibility to design and build. And so I ended up building an atmospheric pressure probe. So it gives us a really accurate reading of Mars's atmospheric pressure. And so it was really cool to see that hardware. Like, I mean, it landed on Mars, they took pictures, and it's like, that's something that I once held in my hands, and now it's like on another planet, which is just nuts. It's surreal to think about.
Yeah, your skin cells are on Mars. Your skin cells are on Mars.
Well, there shouldn't be.
Okay.
And actually, that goes into the next project I worked on, which was Perseverance. And I was given the responsibility of building the drill bits that the rover is using to drill into rocks so that we can gather rock core samples that we, in the future, are going to work to bring back to Earth so that we can study them. And the reason why we're really interested in that is because we sent the rover to this ancient lake bed on Mars. Like, there used to be a big body of water in this crater, and it's all gone now. But we know that water is a very important source for if there's going to be life deriving somewhere. And so we're drilling into these rocks that have once been the lake bed of many years ago. And if life had started to develop on Mars, that's where it would have developed. And so you're talking about skin cells. Like, we had to be extremely cautious about not letting any of our DNA, any human stuff, any Earth stuff, hitch a ride on our parts to Mars, because we might falsely like find life that ended up being like the day that I drooled on the hardware or something, you know? So not only did we go into a clean room where a lot of other rover hardware was being built, but those of us that were working on what we call sample intimate hardware, so like hardware that was touching the rocks that we were going to study, had to go into another layer of a clean room that was even cleaner than the previous clean room. And we would be completely covered. We'd have sterile smocks and the sterile bunny suit. Our feet would be covered, our face. We had goggles on, and we had sterile gloves. We weren't allowed to touch doorknobs. You weren't allowed to touch the tools that were going to touch the hardware. There was all these rules. Like, you couldn't even wear hair products in there. You couldn't have anything that had scent to it. You couldn't have used shampoo in the morning that had scent to it. So there was a lot of caution taken to make sure that this hardware remained pristinely clean so that it could be scientifically integral.
Wow. Were there any mess ups like, oh no, I accidentally did something that you had to like?
I mean, there was a lot of, I would say no, because like we were trained so intensely to like be so cautious around it, and it was one of the biggest challenges, is keeping the hardware clean, and we did it.
Wow. How long did you have to do that for?
We were probably working in the clean room for like half a year, maybe
Oh my
maybe
gosh.
a little shorter than that. But I mean, time on the project, I was on the project for about 5 years, so the clean room portion of it was just a smaller portion.
What is it like to be, gosh, someone who is helping to explore, the next frontier, I guess? We're like finding other things and other planets, and your work is on Mars. I'm sure you look outside sometimes and Mars is visible. You're like, oh my gosh, something that I have is on that. Like, what's that feel like?
It feels really rewarding, and I mean, it is always challenging too. Like, the projects we work on are big challenges, and there's no clear answer. And sometimes with my job, they'll say, here's what we're asking you to do, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and they're like, we don't know how to do it either. They're like, it's your job to figure it out. And so that's one of the coolest things, is like you're constantly challenged to solve difficult problems and take the right engineering steps to do it. I remember early on in my NASA career, I was just happy to be at NASA. I'm just happy to be here. I'll clean the floors here.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a while, I kind of got in my brain like, you know what? I can't just settle for just being like working on in the corner on small things that don't have big contributions. I wanted to work on the big flagship missions, the one that is in the public's eye,
Sure.
the one that is doing the cool stuff. And so I worked my way over the last 15 years to get to this, to work on not only like a Mars rover, like the big flagship mission, but also like a really cool part of it, like the drill bits that are going to grab that sample. And now I'm currently supporting Mars sample return. So that's the effort to bring those samples back to Earth. And I'm responsible for the tube assembly that's holding the samples inside them. So it's just really cool that like just all the work that I put into it has gotten me to like this position where I get to have this really cool impact on really incredible science, not only helping us understand how a terrestrial planet like Mars can form, but it also informs us about how Earth formed over time in the same way. And then also how life could have started to exist on Earth. And then if we discover life that had started to evolve on Mars, that would just be a crazy scientific discovery. And so that's really cool that I get to be part of that.
So you've been just plugging away, climbing up the ladder and becoming a huge part of these teams. Tell me what it's like now to be in your position, and you're kind of like a huge face of NASA. I mean, you're profiled in several different TV shows. You got articles written about you. You were inducted into the Hall of Fame at your school, your alma mater, and you're also turned into a cartoon for Spirit Rangers, right, on Netflix. Like, what is that, right? That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. It's been really cool to not to turn this platform that I have, like my job here at NASA, into something so much bigger. Like being a very public facing figure, of course, is challenging, but I'm like, it's something that I think is part of the job that I like the most, to share the excitement of NASA and share the excitement of scientific discovery with people, and especially Native peoples, because I think for the longest time we don't feel like it's that we're part of it, that we can do it, that we belong in places like this. I certainly, when I was young, like I said, never dreamed of working at NASA because I didn't even think it was possible for someone like from our community to go to a place like NASA. And so I think it's important to have good representation and to do outreach, especially to younger generations, to reach back and help them if they want to follow this path, to make way for them. That's something that I find is important, not only like helping encourage them to come up, but making sure that while I'm here at NASA, I'm helping NASA to open up to Native communities, carving spaces to make sure that they feel supported once they are here, so that they can thrive and be the best they can be when they're here.
You know, when it comes to Native communities and backgrounds, have you ever felt like your maybe upbringing or cultural traditions or things kind of came in conflict with what you were doing? Has that ever come up?
Yeah, I mean, one, just in the way that we're brought up and we're in a certain workspace, can be completely polar opposites. You know, like when I'm here, I'm always encouraged to be louder and be more aggressive, and that's just not the kind of person I am, and that's not the kind of people that natives tend to grow up to be. And I've been really trying to push back to show that you can be a leader in different ways, that you don't have to be the loudest one in the room to be heard and to be the important one. I think it's like slowly changing people's minds about how there are different ways to lead and different ways to work in the workplace.
That's awesome. Do you feel like there are more people from Native communities going into the STEM field? I mean, you have, I'm assuming, like workshops and like you do these speaking engagements. Do you feel like there's more of a draw?
Yeah, I think so. I think more and more Native students are realizing that they're interested in that and that they can do that, that they can belong in a place like that. I'm heavily involved in the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and it's really incredible to see it just grow bigger and bigger every year. There's so many young Native students that are coming into the STEM field, and they're making big differences in Native communities. And like I said, it's our job as the older generation to make a place for them when they get here.
What's it like being in that role? I mean, you know, we hear about that. You know, it's like, oh, once you become established, and then you try to like give back, and you wake up one day and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, the for the longest time, I did kind of feel a bit of guilt because like I left home and I'm not working directly with the Navajo Nation. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I'm not contributing because I'm over here, like sending stuff to space. It took time for me to realize like how that can be impactful and how I am giving back. And I think really just having the determination in your head, in your mind, that you want to give back to your community, you can do it wherever you are, whatever job you have. Yeah, now, and especially like, one thing that I've come to realize, which is really cool, is that, you know, like us natives put a lot of importance on origin stories, and we have traditional stories that talk about not only how we humans came to be in this current world, but also how the plants and the trees came to be, and the animals around us, and the stars in the sky. That's kind of what I'm doing now, is I'm trying to look at how a terrestrial planet like Earth can develop over billions of years, like how human life could have developed on those in those worlds, and how the rocks and the canyons and the plants and the animals and everything, and even the stars came to be. It's like, and now we're looking for the origins of life in a terrestrial planet. Like maybe it started in an ancient lake bed. So now I'm sort of continuing what our ancestors have been doing forever, is like just trying to make sure that we know exactly what our origin story is, where we came from, and because of that, because we know where we came from, we know where we're going.
Do you think that we'll find out in our lifetime if there was ever life on a different planet, or if there is life out there, intelligent life, or even the single-celled organism life?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's very, very possible. Like I said, the program I'm working on now is Mars sample return, how we're going to bring the samples from Mars to Earth to specifically look for origins of life there. And that could happen within the next 10 years. We could know if it did or not. If we don't find it there, then we'll keep looking elsewhere. Like we're also sending missions to one of the moons of Jupiter, called Europa, that is currently covered in like ice, and it's ice because it's frozen water. And we believe if we look below that frozen layer, we might possibly find life there as well. So yeah, we'll keep looking to just continue to look for our origins.
What do you think that would do to us as a human race to find out that there was possibly life in a different planet that I don't know is no longer there, or that there is life out there? Could we handle it?
That's a great question. I don't know. Yeah, like I'm trying to think about how I would react if I found out, and it would kind of just blow my mind, you know. But I think one thing that we're learning as we're looking for this, like if Mars had all the conditions at one point, and then even if we find that life was there before, it's not there now, right? It happened a long time ago. Like it's helping us realize that us here on Earth are so unique, and it's like a crazy miracle that like this world around us evolved in the way that it did, and that we are existing like this. Like it's almost like we are so special to be living this life here.
Would you ever go to space? Is that something that you feel like you'd ever be up for?
I have never been like somebody that wanted to go to space. It kind of reminds me of like deep water. I also have a fear of deep water. Like I just don't think I would thrive out there. And people always ask if you want to go to Mars too, and I say no. Mars is a very harsh place too. It's very cold. You can't breathe the air. You would have to live in a little bubble to keep you safe. So me personally, I'm not super interested in going into space, but I do love to send robots to space.
Wow. When you talk to schools or groups of people, what is your advice for them in terms of going after what they want? I mean, it seems like you're a huge example of you just show up, do the work, and keep pushing.
Yeah, I think there's two big things I usually try to get across to them. One of them is just like your own journey, your path, what you want to achieve is all up to you. Like, like if it's to be, it's up to you. As opposed to like having your parents tell you what is good for you, or having your teachers tell you what to do, like tell you what the next step is. Like you should be like when I was a student, I was the one looking up summer programs and I was applying to them. I wasn't being told by my parents to apply to certain things. And then when I got into Stanford, I remember my parents were really unsure about being able to pay for it, and they were worried about me leaving home. And so I took it into my hands to go look up all these scholarships, and I applied to a whole bunch of them, and kind of prove that like I can find my own funding. I'm going to do this. This is for me because I want this for myself. I want this for my future. And I think that drive is really what got me here eventually. And then two, the other thing I want to get across is that like when I was talking about how I never dreamed that I would end up working at NASA, I think I realized I was limiting what I was dreaming, and it took going to those summer programs that helped me realize my own capabilities and help me come out of my shell, help me realize what opportunities are out there. And so I think I just kind of remind students, like, make sure you dream bigger. Like, don't limit your dreams, dream bigger. And you, like, if you can see yourself at a place like NASA, like, you can get there.
Before we leave, do you have anything up ahead that you're working on or excited to become a part of, or what's next?
So aside from the work I'm doing at NASA with Mars Sample Return, that's a really exciting thing coming up. I guess a lot of the big projects that I had been working on have now been come out. Like the PBS program Native America just aired this past, I think it was in October, and then the Spirit Rangers episode that I was animated in came out this year as well. And there's nothing like that currently in the future, but there's always things that pop up. I'm always doing. Actually, this weekend I'm doing a talk at a museum in Boston. Last weekend I was doing a keynote speech at a conference. So like things like that are always happening. And in between all that time, I always get a request from classrooms, from small libraries and stuff to do talks. And I'm always happy to do that, especially Native communities. I love chatting with Native kids.
Oh my gosh. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for your time this morning. I definitely appreciate it. Very inspiring, your story, and also makes me want to, dream bigger too. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
This is Here Before, Here Now, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.